Hi guys and welcome to Crazy Pepper Revenge. This channel is all about crazy true stories, stuff that happens in real life when things get a little bit messy, people dealing with drama, cheating, lies, breakups, and even revenge. Some stories are wild, some are emotional, but all of them will keep you watching. If you like real talk and real situations, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stick around. This is Crazy Pepper Revenge, where the stories get spicy.
6 years of insults, and you think I'll just swallow this too?
So here's the thing about family reunions. They're like root canals, except at least with root canals, you get good pills and nobody expects you to smile through the whole thing. But there I was, sitting in this barn-style dining hall that looked like someone had watched too many episodes of Fixer Upper and decided rustic chic was the way to go, surrounded by the Prescott clan in all their designer-clad glory. The smell hit you like a freight train the second you walked in. Marinara sauce bubbling away in those industrial-sized warmers, garlic bread that probably came from some fancy bakery in the city, and enough cologne and perfume to choke a horse. Seriously, Uncle Howard must have bathed in that stuff. I'd strategically positioned myself at the long pine table like some kind of social warfare expert, hands folded in front of me like I was back in third grade, trying to blend into the furniture. You know that feeling? When you're trying so hard to disappear that you practically become one with the wood grain? Yeah, that was me. Human wallpaper at the Prescott Family Spectacular. My wife, Marissa, was absolutely glowing, laughing at something her cousin Sophie had whispered in her ear. Her whole face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since our honeymoon, before reality set in, and she realized she'd married the guy who shops at Target instead of Nordstrom and thinks a fancy dinner is anything that doesn't come in a drive-through bag. The rest of her family had claimed their spots around the table like they were marking territory. Uncle Howard in his tailored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and my car isn't exactly a beater, mind you. The guy looked like he'd stepped out of a whiskey ad, all silver fox confidence and I own half the city energy. Aunt Margot dripping in so much gold jewelry she could have been mistaken for a walking Fort Knox exhibit. Every time she moved, it sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. And then there was Tristan. Ah, Tristan. Marissa's beloved brother, who'd made it crystal clear from day one that I wasn't exactly his first choice for brother-in-law material. The guy had the kind of face that screamed, I peaked in prep school and I'm going to make that everyone else's problem. 6 years we'd been doing this dance. 6 years of him looking at me like I was something he'd scraped off his Italian leather shoes. The conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream. All talk about ski trips to Aspen that cost more than most people's annual salaries, wine tastings in Napa where they probably spent more on a bottle than I made in a week, and exclusive charity galas with guest lists tighter than Fort Knox. You know, the kind of events where they don't just check your name at the door, they check your net worth, your family tree, and probably your credit score while they're at it. I nursed my water like it was liquid courage, which, let's face it, it basically was at this point. The ice cubes clinked against the glass every time my hands shook just a little, not from nerves, mind you, but from the sheer effort it took to keep my mouth shut while they discussed their problems. Like whether the caviar at last week's fundraiser was subpar or if their personal trainers were charging too much for house calls. That's when Tristan decided to make his move. He'd been eyeing me all evening like a cat watching a mouse, just waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. He leaned forward, that trademark smirk spreading across his face like spilled wine on white carpet, ugly and impossible to ignore. Grayson? He drawled, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. You're being awfully quiet tonight. What's the matter, buddy? Did your little hometown never teach you how to keep up with adult conversation? The chuckles that rolled down that table hit me like a slap in the face. Not genuine laughter, but that polite, superior kind that says, we're laughing at you, not with you, and we want to make sure you know it. I felt my jaw clench, felt that familiar heat creeping up my neck. I forced myself to smile, one of those tight fake smiles that feels like it might crack your face in half if you hold it too long. Just enjoying the conversation, I managed, my voice steady, even though my hands were practically vibrating with the effort it took not to reach across the table and show Tristan exactly what this small-town boy had learned about conflict. Resolution. But that wasn't good enough for him. Oh no. Tristan was just getting warmed up. I mean, we're talking about real estate in the Hamptons, and you look like someone just started speaking ancient Greek. Maybe we should switch to discussing, I don't know. What do people talk about where you're from? Tractor pulls, county fairs, pie contests? More laughter. Louder this time. Even Uncle Howard cracked a smile, like watching his nephew tear apart his niece's husband was quality family entertainment. I caught Marissa's eye across the table, looking for backup, for solidarity, for anything that resembled the us against the world mentality we used to have. Instead, I got that look. The subtle shake of the head that said, "Don't you dare make a scene," louder than if she'd screamed it across the room. You know how they say time slows down right before a car crash? Well, apparently the same thing happens right before your brother-in-law decides to turn you into a walking Italian restaurant. One second I'm sitting there picking at my Caesar salad, which, by the way, had enough anchovies to stock a small aquarium, and the next second I'm watching Tristan rise from his chair like some designer-clad villain in a really twisted dinner theater production. He stood up, smooth as silk, reaching for the big ceramic serving dish that held enough spaghetti marinara to feed a small Italian village. For a split second, I thought he was just going for seconds. Hell, the guy ate like he had a hollow leg. But then I saw it. That look in his eyes. The same look he'd had at our wedding when he'd accidentally bumped into me during the father-daughter dance. "Grayson," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern, "you look a little pale. Maybe you need some color in your life." And then he did it. The ceramic dish tilted, and suddenly I was getting an up-close and personal introduction to every ingredient in Aunt Margot's famous marinara recipe. Hot sauce hit my scalp first, and I mean hot, somewhere between fresh from the stove and third-degree burn. Then came the noodles, long, slimy pasta sliding down my face like the world's worst facial treatment. I felt every drop as it soaked through my button-down shirt and pooled in my lap. For exactly 3 seconds, the entire dining hall went dead silent. Not the comfortable kind of quiet you get when everyone's focused on their food, but that horrible, suffocating silence that happens when 30 people simultaneously realize they just witnessed something that definitely wasn't in the evening's program. Then Tristan started laughing. It wasn't just a chuckle or even a regular laugh. This was the kind of deep, belly-shaking laughter that comes from pure, unadulterated joy at someone else's humiliation. The sound echoed off the barn-style walls, bouncing around the room like it was specifically designed to make sure everyone heard just how funny he found the sight of his sister's husband wearing dinner instead of eating it. I sat there for a moment, sauce dripping from my chin onto my ruined shirt, noodles hanging from my hair like the world's most pathetic Christmas ornaments. Around the table, I could see everyone's faces frozen in various expressions of shock, amusement, and what might charitably be called concern if you squinted really hard. Aunt Margot had her hand pressed to her chest like she was having vapors, but her eyes were bright with the kind of excitement people get when they witness a really good train wreck. Sophie was covering her mouth, but I could see the grin underneath her fingers. Uncle Howard was shaking his head, but more in a boys will be boys way than a this is completely unacceptable way. And Marissa just sat there, looking like someone had told her the stock market had crashed and taken her trust fund with it. Not horrified that her husband had been publicly humiliated. Not angry that her brother had just crossed about 15 different lines of basic human decency. Just disappointed, like I'd somehow failed her by existing in the same space as flying pasta. That's when something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the way the sauce was starting to burn my scalp, or maybe it was the sound of Tristan's continuing laughter, or maybe it was just 6 years of swallowing every insult, every slight, every joke at my expense finally reaching critical mass. But I stood up, pasta falling from my shoulders like some kind of carb-heavy confetti, and I felt my right hand ball into a fist before my brain even caught up with the program. The punch connected with Tristan's jaw with a sound that was part slap, part crack, and entirely satisfying. He went down like a sack of overpriced potatoes. The silence that followed was complete. Aunt Margot shrieked, rushing to her precious nephew. Uncle Howard muttered about keeping things civil, and through it all, Marissa remained seated, staring at me like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. Walking out felt like escaping a burning building. On the porch, Marissa followed me out. Well, that was quite a performance in there. Performance? Your brother just dumped hot pasta on my head and you think I put on a performance? You know how Tristan is, she said, like that explained everything. You should apologize. I should what now? You embarrassed all of us tonight. Uncle Howard was talking about potentially bringing you into one of his investment projects. But after tonight, she shook her head. You should take every insult and apologize. There it was, the mission statement of our marriage. I should take every insult, every slight, every cruelty, and then apologize for existing. I'm not apologizing, I said finally. Not to him, not to them. Then you're making a choice, Grayson. You're choosing your pride over our marriage. She turned away. If you don't come back in there and make this right, don't bother coming home tonight. Standing there alone under the buzzing porch light, marinara sauce cooling on my skin, I realized I had a choice. Walk back through that door and apologize for defending myself, or stay outside. Driving away felt like breaking out of prison. My phone buzzed constantly, Marissa's name flashing repeatedly. But I kept driving to a gas station where I spotted the sign advertising free Wi-Fi. I pulled out my phone and opened a travel website. Where do you want to go? The search bar asked. I typed 4 letters. Hawa. Flight 447 to Honolulu departing in 5 hours. Red-eye special. The price made me wince, but I thought about Uncle Howard's condo that cost more than most people's houses. I pulled out my credit card and bought that ticket. 5 minutes after hitting confirm purchase, my phone lit up like the 4th of July. 315 notifications in total. Calls, texts, voicemails. Marissa leading the charge with, "Where are you? And don't do this." Tristan promising legal action. Uncle Howard discussing my future with the family. Aunt Margot listing every opportunity I was throwing away. But here's what struck me. Not one message acknowledged that Tristan had attacked me. It was all about my reaction, my violence, my inability to take a joke. I turned off my phone and headed to the airport. Hawaii hit me like a warm hug. The air had personality, flowers and ocean salt and something that might have been happiness if happiness had a scent. I found an Airbnb run by a guy named Kimo who said, "The island's got a way of showing you things you didn't know you needed to see." My first week developed a natural rhythm. Morning beach walks, coffee at Sunrise Shack with Keiko, who made acai bowls that tasted like tropical paradise. Afternoons, reading without stress. At a cafe called The Grind, I met Lonnie, who ran a surf shop and was struggling with her website. "Our website looks like it was designed in 1995 by someone who'd never seen the internet," she said. I'd actually been good at website design in my previous life. I might be able to help with that. We spent 3 hours rebuilding her site from scratch. When we finished, she asked, "How much do I owe you?" Nothing, it was fun. She looked at me like I'd claimed root canals were my hobby. You think website design is fun? When it's not for people who treat you like tech support slave? Yeah, it's actually enjoyable. Lonnie offered to refer me to other local businesses. Within weeks, I had more work than I could handle. Real work for real people who appreciated it. There was Maria, with her food truck needing an online ordering system. Tommy, the fishing charter captain, whose website looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never seen a boat. And Elena, who made jewelry from beach glass. Friday evenings became beer summits at the pier with Kimo, watching sunsets and talking about everything and nothing. "You ever miss it?" he asked one evening. "Whatever you left behind?" "I miss the idea of it," I said. "I miss thinking I had a place where I belonged, even if that place never actually existed. That's the difference between missing something real and missing something you wished was real." 3 months later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, signing divorce papers. "Congratulations," Patricia Kim said. "You're officially a free man." I'd moved into an apartment above Lonnie's surf shop with windows that opened to the ocean. The business had grown beyond my expectations. Word travels fast in island communities, and mainland guy who actually knows what he's doing was apparently rare. My phone buzzed with a text from Kimo. "Sunset Beer Summit in 1 hour. Tommy Katsumono today." "You in?" I looked at my laptop where 3 hours of work remained, closed it, and headed to the beach. The work could wait. I'd learned the difference between urgent and important, between other people's expectations and my own priorities. This was my family now, people who'd become family through choosing to show up for each other, not through obligation. No dress code, no hidden agendas, just people who liked each other sharing food and stories while the sun painted the sky. Somewhere on the mainland, my former in-laws were probably still discussing my disappearance. Marissa had probably found someone more suitable. And for the first time, I genuinely hoped they were happy. Not because I missed them, but because their happiness was no longer connected to mine. The spaghetti incident had become the beginning of something better instead of the end of something that never really worked. Hawaii wasn't just where I'd escaped to. It was where I'd finally remembered who I was supposed to be all along.